much longer are you going to continue the search?
Until we find the rest of them. Or until there's no hope.
Authorities said they were driving a 1969 white and blue Mercury Montego, license number XQG831.
He's a very home boy. He always wants to come home.
They've searched along levee roads and other not-so-obvious places like mountainous areas and the county's
The
back
mourning
roads.
can begin for some of the families, and in a way, maybe their agony is over. For the lawmen, there lies a bigger job ahead, trying to find the answer to the baffling question of what the men were doing here. Did they get here on their own, or were they brought here deliberately and left behind to die?
5 young men drove into the Sierra Nevada one February night in 1978 and never came home. Their car was found abandoned in working order on a snow-choked road miles from where they were supposed to be. Months later, their bodies surfaced under bizarre and haunting circumstances, with one man still missing to this day. Was it a tragic accident, a sinister plot, or something stranger? Tonight, we unravel the enduring mystery of the Yuba County Five. Welcome back to the Common Anomaly podcast. I'm your host, Stuart James. Joining me today is Clayton James. How's it going, brother?
I'm doing good today.
Excellent, excellent. We're back. It's the end of September.
Yeah.
We're actually back to our normal workflow here.
It's
Feels
good to be back in the studio.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's great. How are you doing? How was your vacation?
It was good. I had a really nice trip. Got into a little bit of trouble though.
A little bit of trouble.
Yeah, got locked in prison.
Oh yeah?
Very briefly.
Very briefly. How'd you get out?
So me and Susie, we went to this old prison in Wyoming. It was like Wyoming's first state penitentiary. It's a museum now. You know, it was closed down in I think 1903, and it's a museum now. You can go in there and tour it. We were in there most of the afternoon, and we got kind of distracted looking at one of the exhibits. They got some really cool stuff in there. We were looking at an exhibit on Butch Cassidy because he was once held at that prison.
Oh, cool.
And while we were looking at that exhibit, I guess we lost track of time, lost track of when the place closed, and no one came in to check on us. No one did a walkthrough, and they all the staff left and they locked us in.
So what did you do? Did you spend the night there?
No. Actually, we made a daring escape.
Daring escape?
Yeah. Actually, we found our way out of the main prison building before we even realized that that the place was closed, because we were still wandering around, and all we could hear was couldn't hear any other people. Hadn't seen any of the staff in a while. I'm like, I could remember a while back we heard all these doors slamming and then just silence. We were wandering around. I'm like, I don't think anyone's here. So we just went out this crash door into the courtyard.
Right.
And
was the place not alarmed?
Well, yeah, we went out the crash door and we were kind of wandering around the courtyard, and I was trying to get some photos of just the main prison building, and all of a sudden, with a delay, this alarm goes off. I jump. I'm like, what the hell was that? And as we were wandering around some more, because this whole complex is kind of fenced off. You actually you enter through like a gift shop, and then you exit. You enter through the rear of the gift shop, and then there's the main prison building. So you have to exit through the gift shop. So we got to the gift shop building and it's locked, so it's like we can't get out of this complex. So wow. There's like an emergency exit just to the side of that, so we had to go through the emergency exit. But we were driving away and Susie was like, I can't believe they just locked us in the prison.
I can't believe you broke out of prison.
I was saying,
are they still looking for you?
We're like,
have
we're
you
like
checked the
real Wild West outlaws now, because we busted out of the same prison that once held Butch Cassidy. But we were driving away.
Good show.
I said, they're going to have a staff meeting about this tomorrow.
Yeah, probably.
Like, you guys, you got to.
Do they have security cameras? I bet that's.
I don't know. Probably.
I bet that'd be some funny footage.
Like, you guys got to stop locking people in the prison.
For sure. Well, I'll tell you what, I've got a story too. I went to the psychic fair last night after work.
Oh, cool.
Do you remember? I think weeks ago.
Invite me.
I did invite you. Weeks ago, I sent you a thing on Facebook, and you completely ignored me.
I need reminders like closer to the day.
I know, but I figured you were working. So after work last night, I just thought I'd stop by there super quick. and I got a tarot reading, which was really awesome. And the medium was kind enough to let me record the whole thing. I bought our little field mics, our lapel mics. And I got the whole thing recorded. I don't think it's really usable audio. There's too much din. It's in the middle of a big hall and there's lots of background noise of people talking. Our audio came through nice and clear, but there's just too much background. Yeah. And nobody wants to listen to my personal reading for 20 minutes. But I thought maybe if there's audience interest, that maybe a local medium. I was thinking I would reach out and maybe we could get her on the show for an interview at some point. Because I'd like to go into tarot and mediumship and psi phenomenon. Like, that's a big interest for me. So I'd love to know what the audience thinks. If that's something you're interested in hearing, please reach out. We love the audience feedback, so let us know if that's something you want to hear about. But anyway, let's get in today's topic. We've got another kind of cold case mystery. I love these. It's been a little while since we've done one, hey?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very similar to the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Often called America's Dyatlov Pass.
Yeah. And actually a fan, this will be my shout out today, reached out a couple weeks ago and said, hey, you guys should do the Dyatlov Pass. And I was so happy to be able to point them to our episode that we've already done back in season 1 on the Dyatlov Pass. So if you're into this type of story, go back through our catalog, look up the Dyatlov Pass episode, one of my favorites. But yeah, so this is a very similar kind of mystery. Do you want to lead us off and give us the lowdown on this one?
Sure, where to start? Basically, these 5 young men, the Yuba County Five, they all belonged to something called the Gateway Program, which was basically like vocational training program for young men with
disabilities.
Young men with developmental, mental disabilities. Yeah. For people that are a little slow and have trouble maintaining a job, they all belong to this program, and they became friends through this program. Very tight-knit group of friends. And one night, this was on February 24th, 1978. They all lived in a town called Marysville in California. The program was actually in Yuba City, just across the river. So they were driving from Marysville to another town just north of there called Chico, and they were going there to watch a basketball game. Yeah. Between, one of their favorite basketball teams was competing in this. So they drive out, they watch the game, they leave at about 10 p.m. They stop at a local convenience store. I think it was called Bears Market.
Yep,
they pick up some snacks for the road, and they're supposed to drive back to Marysville because they've got to get up early the next day because they've got their own basketball game they're going to be playing in. They all belong to a basketball team through this Gateway program called the Gateway Gators. Yeah. So they're really excited to be playing in their own game. It was sponsored by the Special Olympics, I guess.
Yep, that's right.
So they get on the road back to Marysville. They never make it to Marysville. A couple days later, their car is found. They had, at some point during that drive, taken a detour. The road from Chico to Marysville, it's just straight south. At some point, they'd veered off east, and they'd driven way into the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Yep.
And their car was found there. And several months later, their bodies were found. Yeah. Under pretty inexplicable circumstances. Yeah. 4 of their bodies were found. Actually, one of them was never found.
Yeah. And so the names of these young men, we have Ted Weir, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jackie Hewitt, and Gary Mathias. And Gary Mathias is the man that is still missing till this day, presumed dead.
Yeah, he's probably the most interesting character. I mean, they're all fairly interesting characters, but he's the one people talk about the most, and usually the one the most shade gets thrown on and the most suspicion gets thrown on.
Just the fact that he's the one that was never found, I guess, garnered a degree of suspicion. The whole thing is such a mystery that people are left to speculate, and so immediately he's a suspect in the deaths of the other four simply for the fact that he was never found.
Well, not just that. Gary Mathias, he had a pretty checkered background himself. So all these men, Bill Stirling, Jackie Hewitt, Ted Weir, Jack Madruga, they were all, developmentally disabled. At the time, in the 70s, they were, diagnosed. They were given the broad classification of mentally retarded. I'm not trying to throw shade at them or insult them. That was the term used at the time.
Yeah, not a modernly acceptable term, but
yeah,
in the context of this story, that's the classification. Yeah.
And these men were hardly helpless individuals. They were quite high functioning. In these days, Bill Stirling, Ted Weir, and Jack Madruga, at least, would have probably been diagnosed with something like ADHD or Asperger's or obsessive-compulsive disorder, treatable things that you can live with. But at the time, they didn't know how to deal with it.
And Gary Mathias, he had schizophrenia.
Yeah. So Gary Mathias, he was not developmentally disabled. He was very intelligent. He was a perfectly normal individual until his 20s. He joined the military out of high school. He was stationed in West Germany. And during the service, he developed, not only did he start developing mental health issues, he started developing substance abuse issues. He was using LSD and methamphetamine while he was in the service. And this aggravated some underlying mental health conditions he had. Turns out he had paranoid schizophrenia. And at some point when he was in the service in West Germany, he kind of snapped. He went AWOL. When they, tried to bring him back in, he assaulted one of the MPs. He was given a psychiatric discharge from the military. When he came back to America, he had a very chaotic few years.
Yeah.
He was constantly getting into trouble with the law. He was breaking into people's homes. He was assaulting people. He assaulted a police officer at one point.
Right. I've heard statements from family members of the other four boys, and these are maybe controversial or contested statements that the other four were kind of scared of Gary, that they didn't really necessarily want him coming along that night. Which I'm not sure is true or not. Apparently, you're right. Like, he was very unstable and potentially violent when he was not medicated for schizophrenia.
So I never got the sense they were scared of him. Like, when he came back to America, the years 1973 to 75 were kind of chaotic years for him because he wasn't taking his medication. He was acting very unstable. He was constantly talking about voices telling him to do things. Eventually, in 1975, he starts getting some, serious treatment, and he starts taking his medication. And people often describe Gary Mathias as being two different people. There was medicated Gary Mathias, and there was unmedicated Gary Mathias. And while he was taking his medication, he was very stable. He was very outgoing. He was, a really nice guy to be around. And the parents of the other guys in that group, they actually, they were a little bit worried about Gary Mathias being friends with them at first.
Yeah.
But as they got to know him and know his family, they kind of accepted him, and they felt that group of friends was a very stabilizing influence in his life. And, he very much acted like, almost like a leader in that group, but also kind of an outlier at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
He was definitely more worldly. The other guys, they led very sheltered lives.
Yeah.
And
there's no reason, from my understanding, that during the course of this incident, at least the initial inciting incidents this night in February 1978, that he was not medicated. I mean, that may have played a role later on as events unfolded.
Yeah.
If he was unable to have his next dose or whatever, it might have impacted events as they unfolded. But in the initial incident, he was probably on his medication and behaving normally. Yeah.
So what happens? These guys go missing. They never come home from their basketball game. A few days later, their car is found. That was Jack Madruga's car. It was 1969 Mercury Montego, and it was found very far away from where it should have been.
Yeah.
And it looked like at some point it had gotten stuck in the snow.
Yep. Because they were on a mountain pass that was, they were way off course.
But the odd thing was, it wasn't that stuck. Like, it wouldn't have been that stuck, because these five guys, And they're all very athletic guys. They're big guys.
Yeah.
And the car was not stuck enough that the 5 of them couldn't have gotten it unstuck. Actually, it said that just, if one of them had just sat on the back of the car, the tire would have gotten enough purchase on the road to get them unstuck.
Yeah.
It would have been
the
very
car
simple.
was in perfect working order.
Yeah. Jack Madruga, he took a lot of pride in that car. Jack Madruga and Gary Mathias were the only two in the group that had driver's licenses. Jack was the only one that owned a vehicle, so he would usually drive this group everywhere. And he was very protective of that car. He was the only one allowed to drive it, and he was very selective of where he drove it because he liked to keep it in immaculate condition.
Yeah.
But the car had gotten stuck, but not that stuck. And these men are missing.
Yeah.
Search parties are sent out.
Search parties
throughout the winter. They have to stop searching eventually because the weather's gotten so bad, and this series of snowstorms comes, and they actually almost lose several of the search party during the search.
Because the weather's so bad.
Yeah, two of the search party almost die on that mountain.
Yeah. So the search doesn't really, like you say, it's interrupted, and they're not really able to conduct it properly and yield any results until the spring.
Yeah. So what happens in the spring is, this was on June 4th, a group of bikers happen upon a U.S. Forest Service trailer high up in the mountains. And they're just passing by, but they notice that there's this really horrible smell coming from it. So they go to investigate. They notice one of the windows is broken. And they figure, maybe an animal got in there and died, and that's this horrible smell. And, they poke their heads through the window, and they see, laid out on a bed in the trailer, the body of Ted Wheeler. Mm-hmm. And he's wrapped in blankets from head to toe. It looks like, he's been dead not that long, actually. They determine he's been dead for 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So he's been in this trailer for months.
Yeah.
For months.
In pretty
and months.
rough shape, suffering from hypothermia, slowly starving to death.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is,
months.
why did he starve to death?
Because the trailer was full of rations and preserves.
So this trailer was stocked with enough military rations to have fed all 5 of those men for a full year.
Yeah.
But he clearly knew it was there because some of it was eaten.
Yeah.
He had opened and eaten some of it, but not that much.
Yeah.
Not that much.
And there was also provisions for fire, you could heat the trailer.
There was a whole heating system in that trailer which was never used. It was never turned on. It was
never utilized. So this starts to engender some of the questions of why this is so mysterious. On the surface, when I first started doing the research, I was like, I had that moment where I often have when we start on a topic is, okay, maybe there's not that much here. On face value, this looks okay. There's this group of guys. They all have some degree of cognitive disability or psychological disorder. Mm-hmm. They took a wrong turn. They find themselves in a tough spot in the mountains in weather they're not prepared for, and they're unable to cope with that situation, and they tragically die. That's what it looks on face value. But yeah, as we kind of dig into this and start peeling back the layers of the onion, there's a lot of questions left unanswered. Yeah. Like, why were they there in the first place? They were very off course. And I'm spacing on his name. The driver, Madruga, he's done this drive.
Yeah. The
hundreds of times.
Between Marysville and Chico, Jack had driven that exact drive many times.
Yeah. And I mean, you're going up into the mountains versus south into a valley.
Yeah.
Right? And there's multiple places along the highway for you to stop and turn around, go the other way, and there would have been every sign that they were heading the wrong way, into bad weather, heading north into mountains instead of south into a valley. And again, a very familiar route. Why were they up there in the first place? Like you said, why did they abandon a perfectly functioning car that wasn't that stuck? Like, why didn't they push 5 guys get out of the car, push themselves out of the snowdrift, and turn around and go back the other way.
Yeah, and why did even when they left the vehicle, why did they continue the way they were going? You know, if you're lost, usually the first thing you do is you backtrack.
Yeah.
But no, their car gets stuck. They abandon it and they keep going.
Yeah, in the same
up
wrong
this
direction.
Mountain pass.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Yeah, why wouldn't you turn around? And if you're going to walk in any direction, why wouldn't you walk back down the mountain towards safety?
And
right?
Plus, none of these men were really dressed for the weather. You know, it's winter, it's snowing, it's cold. You know,
it would have been. It's equivalent to here. If you're local to the Calgary area, things could be fairly mild and temperate in Calgary. But we're an hour from the Rocky Mountains. Like, you can drive an hour west and the weather will be very different. It'll be easily a 10 to 15 degrees cooler, you know, in a very short drive, right? And you'll be in a much higher elevation.
Yeah, and plus I mean, as they left for the basketball game, you know, you hear the interviews with the parents, and all the parents said basically the same thing. You know, very doting parents to, you know, very sheltered kids. They said, you know, don't forget to bring a jacket. And they said, no, I won't need a jacket.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be at the basketball game. And
in Chico, right?
And, you know, from here to there, I'm going to be in the car. You know, I don't need a jacket.
No.
But, they found themselves on a mountainside somehow. None of them were dressed for the weather. So we found Ted Wheeler in the trailer.
Yeah.
He is often described as a gentle giant. He's 32 years old, very tall, very heavy-set guy. Very much like an older brother protector figure to Jackie Hewitt, who was the youngest and arguably the most disabled of the group.
Right.
We'll talk more about Jackie Hewitt later. So they find Ted Wheeler, very tall, very heavy-set, weighed over 200 pounds. When they found him, he had lost over 100 pounds.
Right.
You know, he was
more evidence to the fact that he had survived quite a long time in that trailer.
And just looking at how much his beard has grown, they could tell, you know, he's been surviving here a while.
Yeah.
You know, if they had found him a couple of weeks earlier, he might have actually still been alive.
Yeah.
And might have been able to tell people what happened to them.
Well, and I'll drop this right here, but when we get later into the theories and some of the questions still lingering, is why was he not found till that long? Like we said, the bad weather interrupted the search, but I forget which neighboring county it was, but the county sheriff of one of the neighboring counties had pointed out to the team of Pluma County, who was conducting the search, that those U.S. forestry trailers were there and they should be checked.
Yeah,
but that was ignored. They never went there. It was assumed that was too far away.
It was claimed that the trailers were checked, actually, but there's a lot of accusations of incompetence during the investigation of this, because it was claimed that those trailers were searched. How were they searched? Someone kind of walked up to them and poked their head against the window and said, and didn't see anything. Said, good enough.
Right.
And it turned out later that the two people who were assigned to search those trailers, they were extremely hungover that day. They were searching the trailers because they'd been out drinking all night.
And I suppose
they completely missed the body in there.
I suppose that's plausible, just human error, and then you would think it's been searched. But I mean, typical search procedures, you check and you recheck and you recheck, right?
Yeah, but they didn't recheck, and so Ted Wheeler unfortunately was not found until the spring. But they do have the one body. So what happens next? They start searching around this trailer. The next bodies to be found were Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling. They were found just a little bit south of the trailer, about 8 miles south of the trailer, 11 miles from their vehicle. It was just skeletal remains.
Yeah.
You know, they found some bones and they found some
it's almost
clothes.
like they were, assuming they were traveling together, it's almost like they dropped one at a time, kind of succumbing to hypothermia on the path. Or it's possible that they kind of got broken up at some point and scattered and maybe were taking different paths up the mountain. They were in the middle of a blizzard.
Yeah, but Madruga and Sterling, they were found very close together. They were found, they had been walking up kind of a dirt road, and they were actually found just on opposite sides of that same dirt road. Anyway, just skeletal remains. Death is
their bodies obviously had been picked over by animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scattered bones and some clothes and, their wallets basically is all that's left. Death is of both ruled hypothermia. I actually find that a bit problematic because, if all you have left are bones, very difficult to definitively rule a cause of death, but they settle on hypothermia because
Absolutely. Yeah, just
it's the most obvious thing.
Yeah, it's the most obvious thing. Yeah, I have a problem with that as well. I mean, on the face, it seems reasonable. They were caught in poor weather, not properly dressed, trying to basically make their way up a mountain slope. You would think the most obvious thing is they'd succumb to hypothermia. But how come they didn't make it to the forestry trailer like Matthias?
Yeah.
And sorry, my brain today. The other fellow. But why would those two abandon the other three along the way?
Yeah. A lot of unknowns here.
No.
So a few days after that, the body of Jackie Hewitt is found. Sadly, Jackie Hewitt is found by his own father, Jack Hewitt Sr., who was part of the search party. Jackie Hewitt, interesting though, because he's the youngest. He is the most handicapped of the group. He's only got an IQ of between 50 and 60. He's very childlike.
Yeah.
The other members of this group are kind of very protective of him, but he is actually found furthest away from the car. He actually made it the furthest. He's found 2 miles northwest of the trailer.
Right.
And it's actually suspected that he would have been in that trailer at some point with Ted Wheeler. He never went anywhere without Ted Wheeler. Ted Wheeler was like his older brother type figure, his protector.
Yeah.
The two were kind of inseparable. Kind of goes to show how capable the guy was too, despite his handicap. He made it further than everyone else.
Yeah. Well, aside from Matthias, who I'll point out we haven't mentioned so far to this point, but we know Matthias was in the trailer.
Yes, because
his shoes were found there.
Yeah, his shoes were in the trailer. So Ted Wheeler was actually missing his shoes, but Gary Matthias's shoes were found in the trailer. So we know he was there at some point, and it's theorized that Gary Matthias took Ted Wheeler's shoes with him at some point and left the trailer, possibly with Jackie Hewitt. For what reason? Who knows? Maybe. Some people say they had stayed there with Ted Wheeler for a time and, tried to keep him alive. And then once he died, they just didn't want to be around the body anymore. So they left and tried to find help.
Which would have been they were surviving with him for those weeks and months.
Yeah. So
unless he fell into a coma or something.
Yeah.
And they
Ted
thought
Wheeler,
him dead.
when they found him, his feet were frostbitten and infected. He had gangrene, so he was probably quite ill when he was in that trailer. People say that's maybe why he didn't eat a lot of the food, because
he simply wasn't capable.
He simply couldn't get up out of that bed.
Yeah. Have you ever watched Alone?
No.
I like watching Alone. It's this reality show where basically trained survivalists get dropped off in really remote locations. Yeah. With next to nothing. And it's like 10 people, and the person to stay there the longest wins the game. And it's like $500,000 or whatever it is, right? Yeah. But basically, you're dropped somewhere really remote, with a few tools, and you have to scratch out a living. And some people try and win this game just by foraging and basically just trying to wait out survival, to wait out starvation, to outstarve everyone else, right? But you see how people's cognition and behavior and energy levels are affected by starvation. It's like people literally don't have the calories to do the things they need to do to keep themselves safe, to build a shelter, to keep a fire going.
And the same with hypothermia. Your body cannot kind of maintain the necessary core temperature to keep your internal organs working properly, including your brain.
Yeah, so you can't think straight.
People with hypothermia, they will hallucinate, they will make irrational decisions. So
that could be why they didn't figure out piecing together creating a fire or being able to utilize the heating system within the cabin.
Yeah.
Right.
But none of this explains why they were there in the first place. Why did they take that drive into the mountains? Now, we've talked about Gary Mathias being a little unstable in his earlier years specifically. But the other four, their lives were built around routine. They were very sheltered. They had their routines, and they did not deviate from those routines. And they were described by their families as being very reliable. It's very out of character for any of them to go off on some random drive into the mountains and not say anything to anyone beforehand.
And obviously their families thought enough of their capabilities to allow them to do that knowing the five of them together could easily manage a trip to Chico and back. Yeah. And it shouldn't have been an issue for them.
Yeah.
Right. I know a lot of people point to the fact that two members, both Mathias and Madruga had military service.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, sorry, Zena's groaning at us a little bit. She's just trying to nap. And point to that as like, well, they should have been able to manage this situation. They had military training. They served in the military.
Yeah. But
the degree at which they served doesn't point to them having any kind of particular survival training.
Yeah,
I think people will exaggerate and overestimate what people are capable of and what kind of training you actually get in the military.
Yeah, Mathias and Madruga, they never saw combat. The Vietnam War was going on at the time. They didn't fight in Vietnam. They were stationed in West Germany, both of them. And Madruga, his role in the military was a truck driver.
Yeah.
I'm not really clear on what Gary Mathias's role in the military was, but it was not a combat role.
Yeah.
He was a file clerk or something like that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of just logistical roles in the military, because that's what most military service is logistics.
Yeah.
Rather than combat, right? And even if you were a combat soldier, that doesn't mean you necessarily have really thorough survivalist training.
Yeah.
They
would have had to go through basic training, though.
Yeah, basic training.
Basic training's pretty tough, from what I hear.
I'm sure it is. But it's a primer, right?
Yeah.
And it's not bushcraft and survival. It's combat training, right? Mm-hmm. If you learn anything in the military, it's probably just how to follow orders, right? From a superior.
Yeah.
Just to be able to do what someone else is telling you to do. And this is a situation where there was no one there to tell them how to handle this situation.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily a valid argument in my eyes.
Yeah.
That their military training should have saved them,
Yeah, but at the same time, these men were more capable than they're often given credit for.
Yes.
They weren't helpless. They weren't invalids.
Yeah.
Jackie Hewitt, the most disabled of them, he actually made it the furthest.
Yeah.
Jackie Hewitt was the only one who was, by today's standards, truly disabled.
Right.
Today he would be considered disabled. The other four, Gary Mathias, he's schizophrenic. It's treatable. He was as normal as any of us when he was treated. The other three today would have been diagnosed with something akin to, Asperger's or ADHD.
Yeah.
They were very
spectrum.
high-functioning individuals.
Yeah.
They were at this program because they had trouble maintaining jobs.
Yeah.
Because of their, mental health challenges. But under supervision, they could hold down jobs.
Yeah.
They just required more supervision, more guidance than most.
Yeah.
They weren't helpless. So
maybe that brings us to, what are the theories? So what are the leading theories of what actually happened here? Because people have been revisiting this case for decades, trying to figure it out, and no one's really determined a proof positive answer here.
Well, the families are convinced. All of the families are convinced that someone else was involved in this.
Some method of foul play.
These boys didn't drive off into the mountains by themselves and get themselves into this horrible situation. Someone else, they wouldn't have done that. Someone else was involved. And there have been some sightings, post-disappearance, between when they disappeared and when the bodies started to be discovered. There were sightings that seemed to back this up. Would you like to start talking about Joseph Scones?
Yes. Yeah. Is it Scones or Shones?
I don't know. We'll go with Shones. That sounds better.
I think it's Shones. At least I was watching a documentary on it, and I recall it sounding like Shones. So Joseph Shones is pretty much the only witness in terms of what actually happened on the mountain pass.
Oh, not the only witness, but, on the mountain pass, yes.
Well, he's the only witness that was found and able to be interviewed and discussed about it. Potentially there's more parties involved. Mm-hmm. But he was on the same mountain pass as the Yuba boys, and his car broke down just basically a few hundred meters down the same road as where the Yuba boys' car was found. He had, I guess, been bar hopping the night before, and he had a cabin up in those mountains, and he was heading home, and he got stuck in the snow, and basically it took a nap, and he suffered. He tried to get himself out of the snow, out of the snowdrift, and suffered basically a mild heart attack, a mild cardiac event, and so he decided he was feeling poorly. He was probably inebriated. He was stuck in the snow, and so he basically, kept his car on, cracked the window, and took a nap in his car.
Mm-hmm. Tried to wait it out. Yeah. And at some point the next day he gets his car going, goes back into town or whatever. But he kind of was intermittently conscious throughout the night. And he reports perhaps sighting the boys, interacting with the boys. His story, he's a problematic witness. Because his story kept changing
dramatically. There's dozens of different retellings over the years of how this unfolded.
Yeah, so basically the version of events that he eventually settled on, because he told variations of this story to people, was, at 5:30 p.m., his car gets stuck in the snow. And in his attempts to get himself unstuck, the exertion causes him to have a mild heart attack.
Yeah.
During that time, he's trying to wait it out. He's in and out of consciousness. He's in severe pain. He describes being almost delirious with pain.
Yeah.
At about between 11 p.m. and midnight, he sees headlights pull up behind him.
Yeah.
And he describes the Mercury Montega that Jack Madruga drives. And he says he sees between 2 and 12 people present.
Yeah. Big range there.
Yeah, he's obviously a little out of it. But he says
he's either seen double or triple.
Yeah.
Or he can't count.
But he describes hearing whistling, which gives some credibility to it. Bill Sterling was known to constantly be whistling to himself.
Right.
He describes hearing whistling. He describes seeing these people exit the vehicle.
Well, and he says says he called out for help, but was ignored.
Yeah, they pull out flashlights. They're walking around with flashlights, and he can hear them talking and whistling, and he calls out for help. They switch their flashlights off, and they disappear into the night. Now, a while later, he's not exactly sure how long later, an hour to a couple hours later, another vehicle pulls up behind him, and it's a red pickup truck.
Right.
And this vehicle lingers for a while. There's people walking around with flashlights, including a woman that's holding a baby.
Yeah.
And he again calls out to them. They turn off their lights, and this pickup truck continues driving. He sees the pickup truck drive past him in the direction that these men from the car went.
Yeah.
And that's the last he sees of anyone. Eventually, towards morning, he's feeling well enough that he starts walking. He starts walking back the way he came. He comes upon a lodge down the road. The manager of the lodge drives him to the hospital.
Yeah.
They actually pass by Jack Madruga's car on the drive.
Yeah.
And he's telling this story from the hospital, but events keep changing. What does give him a bit of credibility is he mentions this red pickup truck, which comes up again in another sighting.
Yeah.
Because in a town just 30 miles away from where this all happened, Brownsville, 2 days after the disappearance, this woman is working at a convenience store, and she reports seeing 4 of the boys enter the store. Actually, no. Yeah, 4 of them. Not sure which, because one of them remained in the vehicle, which was a red pickup truck.
Yeah.
Not the Mercury Montego, but a red pickup truck. And it is which 3 of it was it? It was Wheeler and Hewitt and Sterling.
Can I know you're on a path here, but can I interject just a little bit, interrupt you just a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I want to point out some of the discrepancies and some of the different versions of this story that get told by Shones.
Yeah.
Because there's another version in which he said he was being tailgated up the mountain. Mm-hmm. And the headlights he saw were following him before he got stuck. Super close.
Yeah.
And that's why he got stuck. And he got up, and there's basically a road rage incident, and that's why he had a heart attack.
Yeah.
And that's what he thinks was the Yuba boys. And then there's another version of the story where he has his heart attack, his mild heart attack. He passes out in the car, and he has some kind of interaction with the Yuba boys, but they break down again a little farther down the road. He climbs up this hill and sees the Yuba boys interacting very calmly with some folks of a family that was driving this red pickup truck. Mm-hmm. And that all the boys pile into the red pickup truck and drive away. So that's it's these different things that I find really fascinating about this Joseph Shones character, because the story keeps changing in these really divergent ways. And he was obviously, his perception was altered either from alcohol and the heart attack he was suffering, or both to some degree. But I think he's a curious witness to me. It feels like he was involved in some way. He was obviously super close to the inciting incident of whatever happened. I do want to point... I've linked in the show notes to a video that breaks down his involvement in this really good from a channel called The Missing Enigma. Mm-hmm. And there's actually... he was actually able to dig up an audio recording of Joseph Shones being interviewed by the parents of the Yuba boys.
Oh, wow.
Back in... not right in 78, I think it might have been 79 or 80. So
yeah.
Fairly close to the incident kind of thing, right? Which he did a lot of work to clean. It was really bad audio. And he did a lot of personal work to go through the audio and create a transcript of it. I actually reached out to him to see if he could send me the transcript, mm-hmm. but I haven't heard back. It was only a couple days ago, so
yeah.
But I will link to that video in the show notes because it's excellent. And if you want to know more about Joseph Shones and his involvement, excellent resource.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
Well, a lot of suspicion gets cast on Joseph Shones. He's not a very reliable witness. You know, he was known in the area as being kind of the town drunk, and also a pathological liar.
Which would stack up to, it's terrible. You'd think this is such a big mystery, right? It's so frustrating that your one witness is so unreliable on so many fronts.
But at this store in Brownsville, 2 people at this store, both the clerk that was working there, and this was later corroborated by the owner of the store. After the missing persons posters went up, they said, yes, those were the men that were in our store, and they remembered it very clearly because of how oddly they were behaving. Obviously all these boys have kind of behavioral difficulties, and described in great detail how they were behaving, and it all seemed to track, right down to, Jackie Hewitt, kind of following Ted Wheeler around like a lost puppy, Ted Wheeler being very much the older brother kind of figure to Jackie Hewitt. And again, describes them leaving in a red pickup truck. That's the one bit of connective tissue between these different sightings, is a red pickup truck. Yeah, but other than that, we don't really have any sightings between when they disappeared and when the bodies were found. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know what's the deal with this red pickup truck.
Yeah, me neither. And just if there was a family in this obviously the pickup truck was driven by somebody, right? If it was this family, like, where are they? How come they never came forward
Yeah.
to say what happened, and what was their involvement on all this? It does kind of start to point to foul play in one way or another. Obviously, my mind goes a lot to this Shones character. I suspect he was involved because of his story changing and all that he was involved in some way more than he's saying, or more than the way that he's described. Maybe he'd be incriminating himself to say so, right?
Yeah.
It still doesn't. And again, the people in this red pickup truck, how come they never came forward? This is a very famous case.
It points
would have been
to
all
other
over the news at the
people
time.
being involved, other than these 5
Yeah.
guys. There was third parties involved to some degree.
Yeah,
To what degree? Who knows?
Yeah, and we know this for sure. But why were they up there in the first place? What led them up that mountain? There's no logical reason why they should have headed up into those mountains.
Yeah, there's a lot of theories thrown out. One of them is, Gary Mathias. He had friends in a town that was kind of near where they were discovered, and it's suggested that he convinced the other 4 to take this drive to go visit his friends, and they got lost. But again, Jack, he was very protective of that car. He would have not wanted to go driving it in the mountains late at night. They had to get up early the next day to go to this basketball game.
Yeah.
It would have just been out of character for all of them.
Yeah. And I guess those, during the course of investigation, those friends of Matthias were interviewed, and they said, we haven't been in contact. We haven't heard from Gary in years.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for them to randomly decide to head up into those mountains. And plus, Madruga was the one driving.
Yeah.
And like you said, very, very careful with his vehicle, maintained it really well, and was conscientious of where he took it.
Yeah.
Because he cared so much of it. So the chances of Gary being able to convince Madruga to take this wild left turn to head into a mountain in the middle of a blizzard just doesn't add up at the end of the day.
Yeah, and there's also some questions of whether Madruga was actually driving on this excursion because, like you said, the car was found in immaculate condition. Now, this was just like a bumpy dirt road in the middle of the mountains in winter, and the undercarriage of this low-riding car was pristine.
Yeah.
It had no damage to it, and it said that whoever drove the car there would have had to know the roads extremely well to get the car there with no damage to the undercarriage. And Jack Madruga, he'd never driven this road before.
Right.
He'd driven the road between Marysville and Chico like dozens of times, but he'd never driven this road.
Yeah.
He was not one for going out into the wilderness. Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling, Jackie Hewitt, Ted Wheeler, all of them hated the outdoors.
Right.
They were not people who went camping or went into the wilderness. They led very sheltered lives.
So if one of them did have the idea of, for whatever reason, hey, let's head this direction into the mountains, chances are there would have been some pushback, some disagreement from the rest of the group.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe we should get into some of the more out there theories at this point, because just because this is so inexplicable, people have come up with all kinds of stuff, Bigfoot or aliens or MK Ultra connections. Did you want to talk some about those?
Well, where I started with my out there theories, I was kind of thinking about our episode on Dyatlov Pass, and I kind of looked at the myths of the Mansi tribe that lived in that area.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, what interesting Native American folklore is in this area?
Darn it, I did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I was trying to steal a page from your book. Actually, I have a really good...
You probably have more notes on it, because I only touched on this very briefly, because I immediately moved on to another kind of theory.
Yeah, the Aboriginal people of that area are called the Maidu.
The Maidu,
or the Maidu. I'm not sure of the pronunciation.
It's pronounced Maidu.
But, I found some really interesting stuff in their cosmology. And I found a really fun tale of their creation myth.
Mm-hmm.
And they have 2 kind of central characters in their creation myth. And there's the creator, the earth maker, and then who's obviously created the world and everyone in it, and had hoped to design basically a paradise. And then there's the other central character is the coyote, who's kind of a trickster spirit, who represents imperfection in the world. And that character's influences to introduce concepts like death and malevolence and trickery into the world, right? And there's a really fun myth there that I dug up. I think it would be awkward to place it in the middle of the episode here, but I pre-recorded the tale, and I think I'll just put it in the postscript if anyone's interested, just to hear that tale. It's a lot of fun. And I think speaks to, again, similar as we did on the Dyatlov episode, just this idea that there's something underneath our plane of existence that kind of quietly influences our reality. Yeah. And is maybe not an explanation of why things happen in a direct sense, but kind of evokes a feeling of you've got to respect all these elements in the world and the natural world around you. And if you're not paying attention to those subtle forces in the world, maybe they get the better of you sometimes. I don't know. I don't know how you look at it, but that's where my mind goes.
The Maidu specifically, like I didn't get too much into their specific stories, but the Maidu have they're very superstitious about death. When one of their people dies, they will actually they'll cremate the body, but they'll also burn all of that person's possessions, and they'll even sometimes burn their home to the ground. And they won't ever speak the name of the person that died, because it's believed that the restless dead can be called back.
Right.
And people that died, and specifically out in the wilderness, out in the mountains of the Sierra Nevada, they turn into these restless spirits because they were never buried and never honored properly. And the restless spirits will try to call to you and invite you to share the same fate that they suffered. So
kind of luring you away.
So that's kind of as far as I went with the Maidu people, because I'm like, what restless spirits would be haunting that mountain? And then I realized that this entire incident takes place very, very near to where the Donner Party incident happened.
Oh, wow.
Like in those same mountains.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to, we could do I learned a lot about the Donner Party while I was researching this, and I don't want to dig too deep into it because I think it would make a great episode on its own. But just really quick, if you have never heard of the Donner Party, what was that? So it was a party of settlers following the Oregon Trail. This was part of America's, westward expansion. After the Louisiana Purchase, we've got to move west. We've got to settle all those areas, west of the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Okay.
Now, typically, these giant wagon trains of settlers, they would meet up in Fort Laramie, Wyoming, and they'd head west from there, and the trail would kind of split off in two directions. Kind of once you cross the Sierra Nevada, you'd go north and you'd end up in Oregon, or you'd go south and you'd end up in California. Now, there was a man in Fort Laramie, Wyoming. His name was Lansford Hastings, and he was a bit of a grifter salesman type guy. He was always trying to sell something. He kind of reminds me of that, that episode of The Simpsons with that guy Lyle Lanley tries to sell Springfield a monorail.
Right. Yeah.
There ain't nothing on earth like a genuine, bona fide, electrified 6-car monorail. What's it called? Monorail. Yeah, he was kind of that kind of salesman. Sell anyone anything.
Did you practice that before today?
No, I just know The Simpsons that well.
Know it? Wow. That's impressive.
Anyway, Lansford Hastings, what's he selling? He's selling maps because he is advertising a shortcut through the Sierra Nevada. It'll get you to California way quicker.
Right.
And this party of settlers, the Donner Party, they're kind of stragglers on this wagon train.
Yeah.
They arrived to Fort Laramie late. So they buy this guy Lansford Hastings' map, his shortcut. It's called the Hastings Cutoff, which is supposed to save you a month on the journey to California.
Right.
But Lansford Hastings, he'd never gone down this trail. He just invented it by looking at maps and being like, oh, this looks more like a direct route. Very treacherous route through the mountains.
Right.
So the Donner Party, they tragically they arrive in the Sierra Nevada just as winter is setting in, and they get trapped in the mountains. They start running out of food, and there's some cannibalism, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Not just at the site of the encampment, but the Donner Party themselves, they actually sent out like a vanguard, like a smaller group, to kind of make it through the mountains, make it to California, and send help. So not only was the Donner Party starving to death on that mountain, but when this smaller group reaches California, rescue parties are organized to go back into the Sierra Nevada and try to rescue the survivors. And the rescue parties all along that trail start getting stuck and trapped in the mountains,
Right.
and themselves having to resort to cannibalism in order to stay alive.
Wow.
So there's this whole trail of absolute horror
Yeah.
between the Donner encampment and where they were trying to get was a place called Fort Sutter. It's now Sacramento.
Right.
But where these rescue parties and the survivors of the Donner Party kind of exited the Sierra Nevada
That's not
range
us
was
farting, by the way. That's Xena scratching at the couch as she. I think it sounds like farting. Maybe people can't hear it at all, but
maybe, hopefully.
in my ears it sounds like farting. But I swear to God, it's just Xena rolling around.
Yeah. But anyway, it's just interesting where all the survivors of the Donner Party kind of exited the Sierra Nevada range was actually right by Yuba County, right by where this incident happened. Actually, the town that Marysville, that all these kids are from, Marysville was actually named after a survivor of the Donner Party.
Huh. Wow.
Her name was Mary Murphy, and after she survived that incident, she married a man named Charles Covillard, who had recently struck it rich in the California gold rush.
Yeah.
And Charles, he buys an old ranch just across the river from Yuba City, and he founds a town there, and he names it Marysville after his wife, the survivor of the Donner Party.
Wow. Interesting. I had no idea about any of that.
And I just
That's great. Great
found
connection.
I found it so fascinating because I find so many parallels in the two stories because,
It's almost like history repeating.
yeah. So Ted Wheeler, like he starved to death when there was, plenty of food available right next to him.
Yeah.
He starved to death amongst abundance. The same thing happened very much to the Donner Party. It's often said it's really kind of tragic and ironic that the Donner Party kind of resorted to cannibalism when food was actually attainable for them.
Yeah.
They kind of gave in to despair, and they weren't seeing what was right in front of them.
Right.
Like a lot of their livestock, their oxen, like ran off into the mountains and froze to death. They were still there. They were still preserved in the
meat,
snow,
ready to eat. Yeah.
but they didn't go out and get it.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have to do an episode of the Donner Party.
Oh, it's such a great story.
Yeah.
It's such a great story.
That's funny you went there because, there are a lot of crazy stories, crazy theories about what happened to the Yuba Five, and there's a reason we're not digging into those, despite the kind of fun, really out there aspect, is because there's really nothing to support any of those theories. A UFO sighting, MK Ultra, maybe fun tangents to go down, but they don't really add up to much. But for me, the most compelling kind of idea was that there was some degree of foul play, and I was kind of looking at this idea of kind of predatory people, kind of deliverance style.
Yeah.
Where they're in a very remote location, right? And anyway, I had a whole segment about people hunting people in the wilderness.
It does happen.
And people being kidnapped and being used basically Running Man style to be hunted in the wilds.
It happens right here in Canada.
Yeah. I dug up. There's other famous, really grisly cases from that same era, or area, in the Sierra Nevada mountains. But also, in right here in northern Alberta and other parts of Canada and northern Quebec.
Yeah.
You hear those rumors. I remember my whole life I've heard those kind of rumors or stories, but they do have some basis in fact. And I had a lot more stuff on that, but we're well over an hour now. So
I want to cover one more thing really quick because
Okay,
it's too good not to cover.
all right, do it, but you gotta keep it tight.
In terms of other people being involved, there's an interesting story that was happening in Marysville and Yuba City during the 1970s that connects to this. So these Yuba County kids, they were all members of something called the Gateway program. So there was something else interesting happening with Gateway during the 1970s. During 1975, just a few years before the Yuba County Five incident, there's this whole series of fire bombings to the Gateway program's offices and workshops.
Huh.
There was this mysterious arsonist. He started by burning down their workshop. They had to move to a smaller workshop, threw Molotov cocktails through the windows of their offices, and it all kind of culminated on April 6th of that year. The director of the Gateway Project, a man named Donald Garrett, he was found burned to death in his apartment. He had been doused in gasoline and set on fire and burned to death.
So the Gateway program was being directly targeted?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And it didn't stop with Donald Garrett. The man who replaced him, Donald Larson, his car was set on fire pretty much the week after he took over the Gateway Project.
Do we know what the motivation
No,
is?
because this arsonist was never found. The newspapers in the area nicknamed him Weirdo the Fireball Freak, who for some reason was targeting the Gateway program specifically, not just their offices or their directors, but their staff. Staff would wake up in the morning to find their cars burned in their driveways.
Right.
They
Okay.
described it feeling like they were being haunted by a phantom. And it's not known, this person was never caught. It's not known what was motivating them other than they had some sort of axe to grind with the Gateway program itself.
Right. Interesting. So that would create a perceivable motive anyway for foul play.
Yeah.
Or for these boys to be specifically targeted because their connection to the Gateway program.
Yeah.
But without knowing what that motivation is, weird. Okay.
There was actually a lot of local conspiracy theories about the Gateway program because this was during the 1970s and MK Ultra was just starting to enter the public consciousness.
Yeah.
And there was this local conspiracy theory that the Gateway program was actually a front for these MK Ultra style experiments that they were conducting on the clients of the Gateway program, these disadvantaged youths.
Right.
Were secretly being experimented. It was a conspiracy theory at the time,
Yeah.
but maybe someone took that seriously and started directly targeting the program. This series of fire bombings nearly shut down the program.
I feel like I see what you're doing there, and I like it, but I feel like that's a bit of a long bow to draw to connect MK Ultra
Well,
to these boys.
I'm not saying I believe that because that's based on pretty much nothing. I'm saying it was a conspiracy theory
the arsonist
at the time.
Stuff, like the arsonist stuff is really curious, but I don't see a real connection, a real reason to connect those two dots of the arsonist and MK Ultra.
Yeah.
But that's a fun little puzzle to put together. That looks really interesting. We might need to do a part 2 on this.
Where was Gary Mathias in 1975? Where was he?
I don't know.
Could Gary Mathias have been the Fireball Freak?
Maybe. Could Joseph Shones have been the Fireball Freak?
He could have been.
I don't know. A lot of unanswered questions.
It's interesting because Gary Mathias, to this day, he was never found. He could, in theory, still be alive out there somewhere.
I forget which of the parents, but one of the mothers of the other boys swears that she saw years later Gary Mathias at a local pub in Yuba City. But I mean, that happens, you know.
Yeah.
You see someone in the crowd, you know, when you've been through something like that, they look familiar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's, but you know, she swears by it.
Yeah. So conclusion, what do you believe got the Yuba boys? What do you believe? What's your favorite theory?
For me, I think Joseph Shones was involved in a bigger way than he's saying. At least in the inciting incident and what led those boys to, at least from the point their car broke down, to head deeper into the mountains. Mm-hmm. Whether, you know, there was a road rage incident He was drunk. He threatened them somehow. I've seen some theories speculate that Joseph Jones may have been armed, had a firearm, and that he had forced the boys out into the blizzard to head up the mountain, and the only reason they would head out that way is because they're afraid for their lives. But it still doesn't answer what led them to be on that same road together. So I don't know, but for me, he's the most curious puzzle piece in the whole thing. I think he was involved in a more detailed way than we were aware of. I mean, we can't find out now. He's since passed. He died in the early 2000s.
2004.
So we may never know. But for me, that was the thing that stuck out the most, is this witness that I think knows something. He knew something more than he was saying. That's all I've got.
For myself, I'm really torn on the how it happened, but I really got fixated on the why, and it was just like echoes of the Atlov Pass. When I was saying with the Atlov Pass is, it's not like the spirit of the Mansi death goddess literally took form and killed the 9 people on, the mountain Kolotsiako, but sometimes things have a way of finding a way to happen.
Yeah.
And I feel very much the same about this, so many parallels with the Donner Party and happening in the same area, and you hear these legends of these restless spirits of the mountain that died these horrible deaths, calling out to people and luring them to share the same fate.
Yeah, I agree. It feels very analogous to the Outlive Pass in that way, and I like that conclusion that there was a measure of fate involved here.
Yeah.
And
oh, puppy dog.
and Xena is either agreeing or disagreeing in her dreams. But maybe that's a good place to leave it off. Okay, Xena. All right, we're wrapping up. So with that, we'll just say goodnight. And if
like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, all those things, yeah. But we'll say goodnight. Enjoy your weekend. And if you want to hear that story of the coyote spirit, just stick around after the music. And have a good night.
Good night.
Long ago, when the world was still soft and new, the first people lived close to the Earthmaker. There was no pain then, no age, no death. When a person grew old, their body would tire, but Earthmaker planned a gentle way. They would enter the fire or the sweat house and emerge again young and strong, ready to live another life. The world was to be endless, and the people were to walk upon it forever. But not everyone agreed. Coyote, sharp-eyed and restless, listened to Earthmaker's plan. He shook his head. His tail twitched. "No," he said, "this is foolish. If no one ever dies, the world will fill up with people. There will be no room, no food, no peace. The valleys will be crowded, the mountains will be covered, and still the people will come. It will be too much." Some of the first people nodded, uneasy, but Earthmaker was calm. "The earth was wide," he said. "There will always be enough." Coyote narrowed his eyes. He wanted his voice to be louder than Earthmaker's. He wanted to be the one who decided how the world would run. So he spoke again. "If the people die, they will grieve, yes, but their children will take their place. The world will stay in balance. Listen to me. This is a better way." The people wavered. Some believed Earthmaker, some believed Coyote, and in that moment of hesitation, the path was split. One day, when the time came for the first Old One to be renewed, Earthmaker prepared the fire. The Old One lay down to rest, ready to rise again young. But Coyote, crafty, impatient Coyote, crept close. With a sudden breath, he blew out the sacred fire. The flames died. The people gasped. The Old One did not rise. Their body grew still, cold, silent. For the first time, death entered the world. Earthmaker was sorrowful. He said, "It is done now. What Coyote has broken cannot be mended. From this day, people will die. They will pass into the land of the spirits, and they will not return." And so it has been. From that time to this, people are born, they live, and then they go to the land beyond, because Coyote led them astray with his words and his trickery. Some say he smirked, proud of himself. Some say he grieved when he saw what death truly was. But either way, the world was changed forever, and it was Coyote who made it so.